Hello and welcome back to the VFD show. Today I'm joined by my very close friend and musician Cam, also known as Sigs. Today I'm at the Book Cycle in Orrell. We're just here to talk about books versus misinformation online and why it's so very important to, one, support your local community when it comes to these places, and two, to not get all your information from social media like people tend to do. So for those who don't know Cam, do you want to just give a little bit of an introduction to yourself and who you are and what you're all about?
Yeah, hi. I am the aforementioned. I brand myself as an audio professional. I live in Wigan. I grew up here, very working class background, and perform under the artist moniker of Sigs, Cigarettes and Scratch Cards. I make music that is aimed around social observation and themes of dystopia and things like that, and just sort of spreading the message amongst people.
Very good. So I'll include links to all of Sigs's social media accounts in the description. But let's just jump straight into the topic, shall we? Why do you think, please tell us a little bit in your own words, as to why you think that people need to be really cautious about what information they're accessing online, particularly through social media?
I think the most important thing is to take into account that our data is heavily commoditised in this world.
Definitely.
And our attention ultimately becomes the new commodity. And companies, they're harvesting our data based on our internet habits and the content that we're browsing, what we're looking at online. And ultimately, the more content we consume, the more that these big companies are profiting from what we are doing. And if you're engaging with a certain type of content, or you're watching it multiple times, you're outraged, the algorithm immediately picks up on that.
Absolutely.
And the job of the algorithm is to keep you on that app.
Definitely.
And a lot of people, they find themselves existing in these echo chambers of political discourse, religious discourse, social opinion and things like that. And a lot of people say that that's the fault of, that is exclusive to the perceived far right.
Yes.
But I think the extremities of this exist on both ends of the political spectrum.
100%.
In the far left is in an echo chamber, the far
100%.
right is in an echo chamber. Even centrist people are in an echo chamber.
Absolutely.
Because ultimately, through the advent of social media, your attention is commoditised.
100%. This isn't something that is even considered conspiracy theory or tinfoil hat in that way. I mean, to anyone who's paying attention, really, it's so easy to see how I could be having a conversation 1 minute about cat food, and I don't have a cat, but we could be talking about cat food, and people have done these experiments, and the next thing you know, you're getting advertisements for cat food. So this is just one example, but the algorithm does feel very much scripted in the sense of you are shown things that you think, is that something that I engage with normally? More often than not, you tend to find that content is recommended to people who are going to disagree with it, people who are going to, talk rubbish and be outraged by your content in that way.
You've got to look at this objectively, and you've got to understand that the data that is harvested from our attention span, companies are able to make mass profit from that.
100%.
So when we tie that into the advent of social media, where a lot of people are getting most of their information or perceived information, it keeps you in a loop. The algorithm is designed to keep you on that app, and
for as long as possible.
For as long as possible, so these companies can harvest your data and profit off you.
Yes.
So the way it does that is it's going to show you content that you agree with first and foremost to reinforce your belief system and make you think, wow, I'm right, I'm this, I'm that.
Yes.
I am special. It's designed to do that.
It is, actually.
It's designed to outrage you, and it's designed to keep you on the app. So this is why we have echo chambers existing amongst all levels of political discourse, whether that's the far left, the far right, the centre of politics. A lot of these people, they aren't actually investing into physical media anymore.
No.
They're not reading books that have been written for hundreds of years.
They're not doing
reading
their own
philosophy,
research, are they?
They're not reading politics. You look at a lot of these education systems in the UK. You look at Eton College, for instance, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the most reputable educational institutions on the entire planet.
Yes.
People would see that as sort of a red tape. Like
Yes.
you're at that upper echelon of intelligence or perceived intelligence at that stage.
Well, it's very aristocratic, isn't it? And
Yes, but the thing is now, obviously I've talked about how detrimental the internet and social media can be. But it's not hard for us to find the curriculum of Eton College online and read all of those bits of philosophy, education ourselves.
And I will make the point that I think that the internet, particularly the new AI, is probably the biggest threat to these education institutions, in the sense of, in the past you would have to go into debt to become an expert on a subject, but now you can become an expert of any subject you want just by teaching yourself online about it. But then that comes with, so in that sense, it isn't all doom and gloom. There are some excellent things that you can access on the internet, but also I just tend to find that quite a lot of people, they take the first opinion that they hear online, they don't do their own research, and it leads to people kind of being propagandized by these narratives that people create.
Yeah.
No, it isn't. You might hear this kind of conversation and think that we're slipping into tinfoil hat conspiracy theory territory. There's shocking things that you can see about how these false narratives emerge, and people take to the streets outraged, and then it comes out that in a few months that the whole thing was actually just fabricated.
Well, one example of this, sorry to interrupt, this isn't that modern, obviously it's in the last decade, so it is still perceived modern, but if we go back in time to the Brexit vote, for instance.
Brexit, yeah.
It's been proven that a company, an institution called Cambridge Analytica, they ran social media adverts based on the interests, habits of the populace.
Yes.
And basically they were able to push an agenda to the populace to inform the voting system.
Yeah.
And that is how the Brexit vote happened. I'm not going to get into the politics of it, whether I disagree or agree with that. That's totally irrelevant to this.
That's a video for another day.
Yeah, that's totally irrelevant, and I'm not going to judge anyone for what way they voted, because that's your democratic right as
Absolutely.
a member of the UK.
And I think that's something that's important as well. Everybody is entitled to believe what they believe, and I feel like there's quite a lot of, like you say, echo chambers online at the moment that demonise anybody who dares think differently, and demonises anybody who dares question the narrative of certain companies and certain media institutions. And I just think it's really sad to see. From my perspective, I mean, when I was growing up, I think that Britain was in a really nice place, in the sense of, we had the multicultural dream. Everything seemed to be at good levels. There was a mutual level of respect there. But now it seems that there is a narrative being pushed that, we're all ancient enemies based on creed or based on religion, and I just think that the whole thing is just absolutely, well, I mean, to me, it's very transparent what they're trying to do. They're trying to fuel division so that they can get away with embezzling tax money and stuff like that. But, this is just my opinion. I mean, it's not proven, but to me, it just seems like a mass hysteria strategy to try and distract people. And we are seeing quite a lot of gaslighting, particularly even in history, and they're counting on the fact that people aren't going to do their own research and people aren't going to look into these matters themselves. I think we're seeing a rise of people who just go, well, I saw this on Facebook and therefore it's gospel, and it's
no
really
fact
sad to
checking.
see. No.
You look at Facebook particularly, you look at platforms like Reddit, where you don't even need to provide any identification to post on Reddit. You can make multiple accounts and you can post totally infactual and libel claims on that site.
Absolutely.
And there's no policing of it. But when it gets to a stage where it's malicious,
well, it's when
you're engineering public opinion.
Exactly.
And ultimately you're fueling this polarisation that we speak of.
Yeah.
On the topic of polarisation, I totally agree with what you're saying, and we can look back in literature and we can see examples of this. So for instance, in 1984 by George Orwell,
classic.
One of the quotes that resonates with me the most in that is, if there's any hope, it lies in the proles. And for those of you that aren't aware, the proles, they were the I've forgotten the full name anyway, but basically that was the working class within 1984 in the state of Oceania, where, it's heavily population controlled by the government, opinions manipulated by total misinformation. The united working class is the most terrifying thing possible for the powers that be, because a united working class, rather than getting polarised over menial issues, I know they may not be menial to some people, and I don't mean any offence when I say this.
No, we know what you mean.
But let's look at the trans issue.
Yes.
Other issues of that ilk, social things are being used to create a political divide.
Absolutely.
Whereas we have more in common with people of different credence, different lifestyles, different anything, than this 1% of the country, the House of Lords, the ruling class, who dictate everything that we ever will see, everything we are, and everything that we ever will be.
I hear what you're saying, and I actually agree with you that there is so much misinformation going around at the moment. So just please tell me why that you think supporting the local library, for example, getting books is super important.
Well, I think first and foremost, just to mention where we are now, we're in Book Cycle, which is an institution that it operates on a procedure that they'll take charity books and then they will offer them to members of the public at a donation basis.
It's a fantastic community hub as well.
Exactly. And from my perspective, it's not to say that physical media is without policing, because in the past, books have been manipulated, literature's been manipulated, and history's been manipulated. You look hundreds, maybe thousands of years ago with the Great Library of Alexandria.
Yes.
People are open to interpretation as to what actually happened at the Great Library of Alexandria, but in my personal opinion, there was too much information in that facility, and someone
Nicaea.
took it and
3rd century Nicaea, I think.
yeah. Someone got rid of it, basically to control public opinion. My opinion on books is, for instance, my favourite author, it's this guy called Yuval Noah Harari. He's a non-fiction writer. He's a professor of history and philosophy at Jerusalem University.
Wow, okay.
He wrote a book, I think about 10-15 years ago, called Sapiens, which is a brief history of humankind, and it details all of the social learning theory that goes into why society exists in the way that it does, dating all the way back from the hunter-gatherer era to the modern world, and how we have ended up in this series of events that we have found ourselves in. I think it's very interesting because you can't really learn much about the present unless you want to learn about the past.
Absolutely.
I can't remember which author it was, I think it might have been Fisher, but he alluded to in a 1999 book that we live in a cyclical nature, basically, in that history is bound to repeat itself over and over again. I mean, particularly we look at 1920 to 2020, right?
Yes.
We look at Spanish flu in 1920. We look at coronavirus in 2020. We look at the Dust Bowl in America in the late 20s, leading to the Great Depression and ultimately a ginormous financial crash.
I think I see the point that you're trying to make, and it's the sense
We'll
of
go in the same way.
when you educate yourself, you become less susceptible to such schemes, you know what I'm saying?
Basically.
And if anybody is actually trying to pull the wool over your eyes, so to speak, the truth will set you free. I mean, this is a Christian teaching as well, you know.
Yeah. And I think particularly with literature, you know, if something's printed by printing press or written by hand and it's in a physical format, there's no taking that away.
No, there's no diluting it.
Mm-hmm. There's no diluting it. So if you own a copy of that book, that's your information forever to go over whenever you want to go over it.
Absolutely.
And I'm not using information in the non-fiction form of the word. There's information in fictitious books as well.
Oh, 100%.
You know, we've mentioned George Orwell. You know, you look at people like Michael Houellebecq, the French Enfant de Terrible, incredible author, talking about social themes, his own life, things like that. I forgot his name. This is really embarrassing. He wrote Brave New World.
Oh. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aldous Huxley. You look at these teachings that were written 100 years ago, basically on the way that society is going to go and the way that the world is. And I think there's so much knowledge in these things, but if people aren't able to reclaim their attention and reclaim the way that they consume media, you're susceptible to being manipulated. You're susceptible to being not only manipulated by the algorithms and the social media sites that you're using, which are engineered to keep you on that social media site.
But other people as well in your day-to-day life, yeah.
Political figures, people in day-to-day life, social figures.
100%.
You know? And I think it's terrifying. So my number one thing that I would say is please go to your local institutions like Book Cycle, go to your local library, read physical media.
Absolutely, and if people as well would prefer more of an online thing, you know, like I hear the commentary of people watching this video, and they might say, well, you know, I want to be able to access it from my home, and that's fine. That's a fair commentary. You know, no one's telling you what to do, but just make sure that you're fact checking. Just make sure that you're doing your own research and you're not just listening to the whims and wishes and the dogmatic claims of others. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come down and sit down with us at VFD. I'll leave a link to all of Seggs' social medias and the illustrious music that he produces in the description. Are there any closing remarks before we sign off?
Yeah, just always be cautious. You know, when you see an outrageous claim on the internet, just fact check it. You know, we have the facilities available now where you can genuinely fact check anything.
Yes.
It's pretty much instant. You can get your answers instantly.
100%.
Secondly, just always feel free to express oneself in the way that you find authentic to yourself.
Yeah.
And just look after each other, man.
100%. 100%. Thank you everybody for watching this VFD special where I sit down with Sigs to talk about misinformation. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you do, leave a like and subscribe, and if you've got any comments, just leave them down below. We love to engage with you. We love to hear what you've got to say. Yeah, thank you everybody, and God bless.